Good afternoon, I'm O'Shane Masters with the Midday News. Here's what we have in the bulletin. Search on for missing woman who was swept away by flood waters on a Thursday. Tougher rules for the unvaccinated, the latest comments from the Prime Minister. And later in sports, Jamaican and West Indian batsman pulls out of the Indian Premier League. I'm O'Shane Masters. Here are the news in details. A team from the Jamaica Defence Force has joined the search and rescue operation on the way to locate an elderly woman who was swept away by flood waters yesterday in the corporate area. 78-year-old Beryl Bryan was swept away by flood waters in Druseland. Superintendent of Police for St. Andrews South, Kirk Ricketts, says Miss Bryan went to fetch her goats near the Sandy Gully area during the heavy rains when the incident occurred.
Sometime after 5 p.m., an elderly resident of Druseland was tending to her goats near the Sandy Gully area when the water came down and she was washed away. We did have some searches last evening, and after the darkness we had to pause. We're back at it early this morning to see if we can locate her.
However, up to news time, Miss Bryan had still not been found. Superintendent Ricketts says search on the ground has been called off after the team encountered some challenges.
And as such, we had to, put a halt on the search in that area. We have since reached out to the members of the JCF who would have just arrived. They're going to assist us with the technical aspect of searching using drone technology. So after that search, we'll make a decision as to what we do next.
Prime Minister Andrew Holness is again insisting that more people must get vaccinated so the country can return to normal. This comes as the government signals that tougher vaccination rules may be applied when COVID-19 restrictions end. More in this report.
As the country continues to navigate the third wave of the COVID-19 pandemic, the government is intensifying efforts to get more persons in rural areas vaccinated. In St. Mary on Thursday, Prime Minister Andrew Holness gave the clearest indication yet that tougher measures are coming for the unvaccinated.
In the near future, we will have to do away with those measures. At that time, the decision about vaccination will not just be my imploring and begging and pleading and moving around. You as the citizen will be confronted with this.
Several small businesses were placed on life support due to lockdowns and curfew measures. Now Mr. Holness is indicating that at some point those measures will become redundant.
As soon as we are at a particular level, I won't say what that is, at a particular level of vaccination, then we will seek to remove these measures, and then it is now a matter of the personal responsibility of the citizen.
So far, over 730,000 Jamaicans island-wide have received at least one dose of a COVID-19 vaccine. But on Monday night, thousands of doses of the AstraZeneca vaccine expired and will be discharged.
I think if the Jamaican public acted with greater urgency, we could have utilized those vaccines easily. We have proven that we can. You will recall a few months ago when we got a donation from an African country that we were able to utilize almost all of them. This time, I think we are now at the point where we have almost exhausted the naturally willing persons.
Sandy Williams, TVJ News.
In the meantime, the Ministry of Health is reporting that there has been a slight increase in the number of COVID-19 infections and hospitalizations among children. As of September 29, a total of 9,192 children from 0 to 19 years contracted the virus. According to Chief Medical Officer Dr. Jacqueline Besesa McKenzie, that's 11% of the country's overall case count.
In the less than 1 age group, we would have had 644 cases, and this represents 7% of the total number of children that were affected. In the toddler age group, the 1 to 2 age group, we had 983 children that were affected. This represents 10.7% of all children, which is 0 to 17. Preschooler, 1,191 cases. That's 13% of the children.
3,238 children aged 6 to 12 and 3,136 adolescents aged 13 to 17 have been infected with the virus. 2,986 of children ages 0 to 19 years have been hospitalized with the respiratory illness. 79 or 2.6% of them were aged 0 to 17 years. However, Dr. Bisesa McKenzie says the COVID-19 death rate among children is low. She says 0.6% of Jamaica's death toll are children.
We would have had one death in less than 1 year olds. We would have had one death in the 1 to 2 year olds. We would have had one death in the 3 to 5 year olds, and we would have had 2 deaths 6 to 12 years and 6 deaths in the 13 to 17 years. So I must say that except for 2 of these deaths, all these children had comorbidities that would have made them more prone to a severe illness.
And the Medical Association of Jamaica President-elect and public health specialist Dr. Leslie Mead is dismissing speculations that the COVID-19 data by the Ministry of Health give a false impression of what is happening in the country. Speaking to TVJ News recently, Dr. Mead said there have always been the issue of persons not reporting if they have COVID-19. He says this can be for various reasons, including stigmatization if anyone should find out.
Where members in the community refuse to go and be tested when they have symptoms and prefer to stay at home and treat themselves. Also, you have at least 80% of persons will either be asymptomatic or have very mild symptoms, and so they may not be aware of their status.
However, Dr. Mead says the data from the Ministry of Health on the virus over the 18 months still paint a complete picture of what is happening on the ground.
Generally, what we see is that the Ministry of Health has on average about 1,500 tests per day. A few times it had fallen off, but generally around 1,500. And they tend to only use those tests that are done within the public sector. When you look at the stats, they only use very few private sector results to record their stats. And so it has been a consistent data acquisition.
Clinical coordinator at the Western Regional Health Authority, Dr. Delroy Frey, says COVID deaths have been a wake-up call for Jamaicans who are not taking the coronavirus seriously. Speaking to TVJ News on Thursday, he noted that many COVID-19 patients are becoming advocates for vaccination.
I've had friends who have been in hospital and, who have been hospitalized for like a week or 2 with COVID, and they did well. And as soon as I leave hospital, these are unvaccinated patients, and they'll say, "Doctor, when can I take the vaccine?" So when you feel something, you experience it, it's more convincing. It's a pity that you have to feel like that in order to ensure that you follow what we tell you to do.
Now, Dr. Frey says with the decline in hospitalizations, he is also seeing improvements in persons adhering to the COVID protocols.
If you go out on the road now, I was out, most of this week in Montego Bay, and I'm seeing less of the overcrowding. So I believe that the message is getting there, and I look to some positive result coming out, like the numbers continue to trend towards, 10 or less than 10, single-digit figure.
Jamaica recorded 332 new cases of COVID-19 in the last 24 hours. The overall case count now stands at 84,069. The country's positivity rate is 23.9%. 592 people are hospitalized with COVID-19. 38 patients are critically ill, while 85 are severely ill. 131 more people have recovered from the virus, pushing the overall recovery count to 52,948. There are 28,657 active cases on the island. Meanwhile, COVID-19 has claimed 8 more lives. The death toll is 1,877. And it's time for a break here on the Midday News. Stay with us. More stories when we return. Welcome back to the Midday News. The Independent Commission of Investigations, INDECOM, is this afternoon expressing concern about the failure of the Jamaica Constabulary Force to discipline police officers who are involved in assault cases. Deputy Commissioner of INDECOM, Hamish Campbell, says only a few cases have been brought before a criminal or disciplinary tribunal. He believes that the lack of disciplinary procedures could influence further aggression by police officers.
We note that the reasons that citizens and the public come to INDECOM, phone in, go online and report it are self-evident. A sense of outrage, anger, hope for an apology, mediation, restitution, and occasionally criminal proceedings or discipline will follow, particularly if the assaults are egregious and proven. More broadly, there is a public desire that unnecessary assaults and abuse will desist. Analysis of the 2020 assault allegations reveal that in fact very few cases ever reach a criminal or disciplinary tribunal. And there is a concern that the absence of consequence or sanction creates a level of impunity with the police force identified as engaged in unwarranted aggression.
Another concern is that 19 police officers have had 57 complaints lodged against them.
And a total of 123 complaints leveled against 19 officers in relation to discharge of firearm, shooting incidents, fatal shooting incidents. One officer, which in the report identifies anonymously, subject of 22 complaints between 2012 and 2021.
INDECOM says some of those assaults took place within the confines of a police station and also the homes of the complainants. Mr. Campbell says 78% of the complaints were men. Majority of the complaints were against on-duty officers.
But what we noticed is that in many instances, multiple officers were involved in the single event and not all could be identified. And in some allegations of assault, up to 10 officers were involved in one way or another in the assault claim. Of the 19 officers were involved in at least 2 or more complaints in 2020. And one officer was involved and alleged to have been involved in 3 complaint assaults. Some officers, whilst only complained of once in 2020, were already the subject of previous complaints by the public for earlier years.
As for the charging of these officers, INDECOM noted that only a few have gone before the courts. However, 6 officers are slated to be charged with assault this year, while a further 11 assault cases are awaiting trial before the parish courts. And it's now time for the Business Minute. More concern has been raised about the Bank of Jamaica's decision to raise the policy interest rate to a 2-year high of 1.5%. The rate is offered to deposit-taking institutions on overnight placements with the bank. The policy interest rate has been at 0.5% since August 2019. Financial analyst Dennis Chung says while the BOJ's action is aimed at curtailing inflation, it will have negative implications for the economy.
So it means that they cannot afford to buy as much as they could before, and therefore it controls inflation. But what it suggests is that the BOJ sees where there's too much money out there in relation to the productivity out there. The only way for us to address this issue is to put measures in place so that people can ramp back up production. But people have to go back into business. Short term, the only thing you can do is use monetary policy to sort of restrict the money supply that's out there. But effectively what it means is that the economy is shrinking.
Producers of goods faced a 0.5% increase in the cost of inputs in August. Statin says a 1.4% increase in the cost for chemicals and a 0.8% movement in the cost for food, beverages, and cigarettes resulted in the rise. A marginal drop in the cost of fuel by 0.3%, however, tempered the increase in costs. And that's it for the Business Minute. Now for the top regional and international stories. The World Bank has approved a $75 million grant for the private sector jobs and economic transformation project in Haiti, aimed at encouraging labor demand by supporting micro, small, and medium enterprises. The bank says the project aims to foster economic recovery and create sustainable and resilient jobs. The grant is expected to help spur growth in Haiti's private sector, with an emphasis on firms owned by women. Merck and Ridgeback Therapeutics said a pill has cut the risk of hospitalization or death from COVID-19 by half. It would become the first oral antiviral for COVID-19 if approved by the U.S. Food and Drug Administration for emergency use authorization. molnupiravir reduced the risk of hospitalization or death by approximately 50%, according to a release by Merck. In its research, it was found that 7.3% of patients who received molnupiravir were either hospitalized or died through day 29, following randomization, compared with 14.1% of placebo-treated patients. However, through day 29, no deaths were reported in patients who received molnupiravir, as compared to 8 deaths in patients who received placebo. Merck said it will seek FDA emergency use authorization as soon as possible. Experts have said that developing an oral antiviral could be the next chance to thwart COVID-19. And that's it for the top regional and international stories. We head to a quick break. When we come back, we'll have your midday sports report. Simon Preston is standing by.
Welcome back. It's now time for Midday Sports. I'm Simon Preston. With an eye on helping the West Indies defend their T20 title next month, Jamaica's hard-hitting batsman Chris Gayle has left the Indian Premier League citing bubble fatigue. By Gayle's team, the Punjab Kings, on Thursday, Gayle was quoted as saying, "Over the last few months, I've been a part of the CWI bubble, CPL bubble, followed by the IPL bubble, and I wish to mentally recharge and refresh myself. I want to refocus on helping the West Indies in the T20 World Cup and would like to take a break in Dubai. My thanks to the Punjab Kings for giving me the time off. My wishes and hopes are with the squad always. All the very best for the games coming up." The Kings' statement said Gayle is expected to be in Dubai before joining the West Indies squad for the World Cup that begins on October 17. Only 6 players have played more T20 matches this year than Gayle's 37, which have come for 4 teams: West Indies, St Kitts and Nevis Patriots, Quetta Gladiators and the Kings. Gayle follows the likes of Jos Buttler, Johnny Bairstow and Ben Stokes to withdraw from the IPL, citing bubble fatigue. The West Indies opened their title defence against England on October 23. This will be Gayle's 7th T20 World Cup appearance. Gayle and Dwayne Bravo are the only West Indian players to have played in every T20 World Cup since its inception in 2007. The Kolkata Knight Riders posted 165 for 7 off their 20 overs against the Punjab Kings in match 45 of the IPL in Dubai today. Venkatesh Iyer top scored with 67 for KKR. Arshdeep Singh took 3 for 32 for the Kings. At sports time, the Kings had reached 96 for 2 after 12.4 overs. IPL action continues on the weekend with a slate of 4 games. And finally this afternoon, former national under-17 and under-20 reggae boy Sean Johnson is included in the United States' squad to face the reggae boys in the CONCACAF World Cup qualifiers next week. The New York City FC goalkeeper could make an appearance against his country of heritage on Thursday in Austin, Texas. The USA have also included Timothy Weah, who was born to a Jamaican mother and is also the son of the legendary Liberian George Weah. The American squad also includes veterans Gyasi Zardes, Weston McKennie, DeAndre Yedlin and Tim Ream. The Americans, however, will be without Chelsea midfielder Christian Pulisic, who has an ankle injury. The United States are currently 3rd in the octagon with 5 points. And that is it for your Midday Sports Report. I'm Simon Preston. Ashane, it is over to you.
Thanks, Simon. And that's it for the Midday News. I'm Ashane Masters. Join us at 7 for Primetime News. On behalf of the news, sports and production teams, good afternoon.